which I kind of think that they deliberately kind of gave him a Leonardo serious like role to sort of give the other characters more, of interesting. I mean,
Yeah. We're just trying to get the thing to go live, and then we'll be.
I gotta get rid of this one.
In like the 90s comics, when Cyclops is like a uncool dad, he's still really cool. It's just that there are other characters that are playing off him who are supposed to be
yes, like yeah, and he plays like the responsible, like
Yeah, which he is. Like even in the comic books, he's a leader with like the burden of being the leader and the burden of like having to look out for all of these people. It's like his responsibility, and like it was just so important to his character, and we didn't delve into any of that depth of his character at all in like the old animated series, you know.
a lot of the old animated series is like him trying to navigate the gene problem.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yes, I'm gonna move this so that. And then, yeah.
Should,
What?
I swear, if it went out again, I'm actually.
It'd be fine.
Yay! There we go.
Yep, there we go.
you're on.
All right.
On.
All right.
Okay. All right. So if you guys don't know, I think it said in the little description thing that this is basically an episode of my podcast. That's what we're going to be doing today. So you'll hear me. I'm going to do a little intro here to the show, and then we'll get started talking about this show we all love. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Marvel Plus, the podcast devoted to all things MCU. My name is Brett Scott. I am your host, and this is the show. And today, I've got my good friend Zoe McCallum stepping in. She's been to several of the panels that I've done before. She's like a listener to the show, and she's chimed in a lot from the audience. So we thought it'd be pretty cool to have her actually come up here and take part in the show as well.
Glad to co-host.
Yeah. So today we're here to discuss X-Men 97 and just the impact it's had on culture. Like not just with X-Men, like comic book lovers and everything, but I've talked to a couple people here, including Zoe, who were not into X-Men at all before X-Men 97. Like this is their introduction to X-Men. And I've had plenty of conversations on this show about how I think this show is really a catalyst for bringing in so many more fans so that they can do the X-Men justice with MCU X-Men, right? Like I feel like that's what they're doing here, is like bringing back the nostalgia for the fans from the 90s and then introducing a bunch of new people to the X-Men. And then from there, people are going to be geared up to go back out to the theater like we used to for the Avengers and Iron Man and, like the entire MC. So I don't know. That's what I've gotten from this. A lot of new people have come into it. So tell me a little bit about that, since you were one of those new people who had never watched X-Men. Like, what do you think of this series when you first started watching it?
So yeah, I kind of went in literally knowing nothing. Basically, all I had seen was like the clips that everyone had seen, like Professor X monologuing and such. So I kind of went into the pilot episode cold. I had like seen clips of the first movie. I was kind of turned off because I didn't really like Cyclops. He kind of bothered me. He was whiny. It was kind of a turn off. But I have been really liking a lot of MCU's TV shows as of late. So I thought I would give it a try, and I was just like immediately blown away. Like the art style was great. The voice actors really did their characters justice, and I kind of like that. Like going in from the get-go, Cyclops seemed to have like a more mature, like older character, and he seemed to have like a lot more depth to him. And then of course fell in love with Gambit immediately, as we all did. And so that's kind of what was my initial attachments.
Yeah. I grew up watching X-Men the animated series, and loved it. That's what got me into comic books, and so that's why I when I saw this series, I'm like, well, this is going to do the same thing for like a new generation of people, or maybe people who are already adults but had never really delved into X-Men lore at all. And like the X-Men universe is so expansive. Like I feel like it's way bigger and more broad than the Avengers universe that we've seen all over since 2008, right? Um, if you hadn't watched the Fox films at all, I feel like, I mean, a lot of them were really good. This is not like, I'm not here to say like, oh, we're gonna get good X-Men now, because there was a lot of great stuff in the Fox X-Men films, but there was also a couple of stinkers, right? Especially towards the end of it, and they just couldn't seem to get the Phoenix Saga done in movie form. I don't know why they can't do it, but they did it twice, and now I'm kind of worried that if they ever try to do it again, because
they do touch on it in '97
Yeah.
a little bit. They talk about Jean getting like her powers from the Force. Obviously '97 is my introduction. I don't. How much is it talked about like in the initial?
The original series?
Yeah.
They did 9 episodes devoted to Jean Grey and the Phoenix storyline. So they did like her becoming the Phoenix and all of that, and then they had a Dark Phoenix saga, which was 4 episodes. So it was like a 5-parter and a 4-parter. It was most of the season of the show. So it was a huge part of it.
I do love how they did the Madeline Pryor
Yeah.
and Jean Grey cutoff though, and I think that like the way they portray like how torn Scott is very well done.
Can you imagine? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why this series to me is even better than the original, just because of it feels like it's geared more towards the people who watched it back then and are now adults and have more adult themed interests and ideas about what storytelling should be. Like as a kid, they're just trying to get stories out there. But even, they didn't treat you like a kid when you watched it back in the day. It was aimed at 8-year-olds, but they didn't act like they were talking down to 8-year-olds. Like they told some pretty complex stories. But I feel like now they can go even further, right? Now they can really tell some deep, meaningful stories and then give these characters like real motivation and I don't know, you feel for them more. There's so much more depth to the characters in this series than anything before. The only thing that comes close to that is the comic books, okay? Because the comic books are what the entire series was really based on. They've played out many of the storylines from the comics in these series. So you're talking about Madeline Pryor. That was a big deal in the comics. Like Madeline Pryor shows up, and I'm actually going back through that in the comics right now, and it plays out differently than in the cartoon. It's not like a swap.
I wish in the show they would have gone over more of how badly Sinister had like affected her. Like they kind of touch on it, but I feel like they could have done that in further.
We still might get more. What was great about the series, I feel like, too, is that they, as much as I love Wolverine, my favorite character of all time, like Wolverine and Batman, that's it. Like if you go back to the original series, it was all based around Wolverine. There were so many Wolverine-centric episodes. He was like a main plot point a lot of the time. If you watch the original Fox films, that was a Wolverine show, man. Like every movie had to have Wolverine in it. Had to be, even the ones that weren't supposed to, it would somehow work him in there, right? Like X-Men First Class. Yeah, they had to put one line with him in there. X-Men Apocalypse, I believe, where they go back to Weapon X and show him breaking out. They just had to put Wolverine in. As much as I love him, X-Men is like a team book. It's a team story, and like to focus in on one character like that so much, it takes a lot away. That's why in my opinion, didn't get the best version of Cyclops. We didn't get a very deep Gambit or some of these other characters. So this series, what it seemed to do is it was very self-aware. Like it knew that like Wolverine has always been the centerpiece. Let's give some of the other characters spotlight, right? So Wolverine kind of took a back seat this season. If you notice, like there was no episode really around him. He had a big moment, which is straight out of the comics, where Magneto pulls his adamantium out of him, right?
Yeah, that's kind of brutal.
Yeah, and it was so brutal, in fact, that they just did it as like a one-shot photograph, like scene. They didn't even show it play out, in animation. They just did like what do you call it?
Still.
Yeah,
Like
still,
a still. That's all they did, and that was his kind of big part of the series. But
Well, they do still give, I feel like, enough credit where credit is due. Like with the conversation with Jean, like it's still kind of known that he has always been there from the start.
Mhm.
But I do think it was due time for other characters to get some limelight.
yeah, and I think it's what they did. Like if you notice the first few episodes, he's like relegated to like babysitter. Like literally, he's back at the mansion nursing someone back to health, or helping someone out, or helping Jean Madeline have her baby. Like these are not typical Wolverine. Like usually he's right in the middle of the action. Like Wolverine's the centerpiece. So
I did kind of find that amusing, like him being there for Jean having a baby. Like it's such a character shift for him.
It is, yeah, and it worked. So there was some comedy to that. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in like Junior or Kindergarten Cop. Like it's like putting this guy in this situation where he's not normally there, like has no experience with. But I do feel like them doing that was really smart, because we got these amazing Cyclops moments that anyone who has been a fan of the comic books at all knows that Cyclops has not been done justice in any of these outings, whether it be live action or animation. They just can't get him right. Like he's this, I don't know, like he's wooden. He's just a jerk. Like that's not the Cyclops from the comics. That's not the character that was written. He's not. He is a little bit of a stick in the mud sometimes. He's got to keep everyone in line, right? He's got to get everyone back on track when they start screwing around. But he was never this like guy that you didn't like. Like he was a cool character to follow. He had really interesting storylines, like the Madeline Pryor one. Can you imagine finding out that your significant other was a clone and you don't know for how long it's been a clone? Like that's
Well, Ray Chase was talking about how like much he enjoyed voicing like the line where it's like, "Am I just a happy memory to you?"
Yeah.
And I think that is probably my favorite X-Men '97 Cyclops moment. Is that right there?
He did so much good stuff in that. Like from the very first episode, I'm like, oh, they're doing Cyclops right here. Like he was front and center when they were facing the Sentinels in the first episode. He uses his optic blast to like lower himself to the ground safely when everyone else could like fly or had someone to carry them. Like these are the cool aspects of the character that had never been explored before, and I just think it's awesome that they're giving him his due and giving him good storylines.
Yes, the imagery used around like his eyes, like how Nathan had the same eyes, and like that's how they figured out who Cable was. I also thought that was a cool detail, like them talking about like how they met like way back when they were early students was also like a really sweet moment to experience in the show.
Yeah, I think I'd like to talk a little bit about favorite episodes, because earlier you were asking people their favorite lines. Everyone's favorite line is
the name's Gambit won't let me remember it.
Right. That's fantastic. But episode wise, like that's got to be the pinnacle of the series, right? Even though there's that awesome 3-part epic finale, that Gambit episode I feel like is everyone's like it kept building and building it, and each episode you're like, can it keep getting better? This has to be the best one, right? Like episode 3 was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like the Madeline Pryor and like Sinister controlling her, like that was a crazy, dark, like almost scary episode.
I gotta say, I think it's underappreciated. I want to say it's episode 2 when Magneto kind of has his Professor X moment during the UN trial, and he like brings everyone up and kind of addresses like this is what like tolerance looks like to humans. Like this, this is cool. Like there is a lot of imagery in the show around the line tolerance is Extinction. Like, yes, I know it is Bastion's line, but I feel like Magneto has a lot of layered methodology around that line as well. Because like he's seen what the humans consider tolerance, and it's kind of like separate but equal, like that kind of thing. And that's not what he wants. Obviously, he wants like coexistence. He just got a little bit too wrapped up into it, a bit too emotional. Whereas Professor X is like, Professor X is like Mr. Rogers, and so he's not gonna like really truly fight anyone. Magneto is more willing to do like the dirty work in it. So even though it's Bastion's line, I think it has more deeper meaning, honestly, with Magneto.
Yeah.
Bastion's a little more straightforward. He just wants to kill it.
Yeah, and I feel like Magneto was done fantastically too. Like he was one that was always good in the original animated series as well. But the speeches that he gave, like the monologues that he gave in this series, were amazing.
Yeah,
like,
that is my favorite when he brings everyone up.
Yeah, he's awesome. I feel like that's what he's there for. Is like he's almost like a narrator for like.
Yeah, him and Storm are the big theatrical people in the '97 show.
Yeah, and they've always been that way too, like announcing their entrance and like just like grandiose kind of exist. Like they when they come in, they make a big show of it every single time. What do you think of Storm like this season?
I thought it was almost too gimmicky. I'll be honest.
Okay.
Like, well, so at least in the first beginning, I like once she lost her powers and had to go talk to Forge, I got way more attached to her then. But I didn't really. I thought it was gimmicky how she was introduced.
Yeah, I implore you, if you haven't read any of the comics and you really like this series, go check them out, because it's all this stuff is pulled straight from the series, straight from the comic book series. Like that Storm storyline where she loses her powers and like starts not being able to control her powers and stuff like that, all plays out. And
but I do. Once she talks to Forge and has to, what's the character that was the name? Adversary. I do really like the Adversary. I do like seeing visually how that affects Storm, like the claustrophobia. I thought that was really well done. So that is a good. I thought it would have been interesting to see the Adversary more against like Gambit and Cyclops, like delve deeper into that.
I feel like the Adversary to me is a little too reminiscent of like Mastermind, or I don't know, it just feels like it's kind of been done, especially with Storm. Like I feel like she's always getting her mind controlled by someone, or like attacked psychically by someone. It's not my favorite thing. To be honest, I wasn't a huge fan. I loved when Storm had her like powerful moments and showed how powerful she really was. But honestly, when they were telling her a little side story, I was like, I want to see what's going on, like with the rest of the team, like what's going on.
I feel like it was ill placed. Like there was too many questions about what was going on with everybody else at the time.
Yeah, and it was kind of mean too, right? To do the Gambit death episode, and then right after that, follow it up with like, let's go see what Storm's doing. Like, we didn't get the aftermath.
I honestly didn't like the whole Jubilee Sunspot video game thing. I thought it was weird.
Well, I think that could also be too like just a product of the era you grew up in, because I love the nostalgia of that episode. I didn't love I'm not a big Jubilee fan at all. I think her powers are extremely lame. It's hard to like care that much about the character, but she embodies the 90s. Okay. And that's when I grew up. So I get it. And I don't know. I love the video game aspect though, because they had like the Magneto in the video game, and it was straight out of like X-Men, the arcade game. They literally use lines from the arcade game.
Yeah, I assume it's a product of when I grew up.
Yeah. I think it's just like that was definitely a nostalgia piece. Like that was for the old heads. That's what that was.
Yeah, I guess I was like kind of watching it, and I was like, okay, like how does this contribute to the story?
It doesn't. Yeah, it was definitely a side quest, right? It was just like, but it was also getting to know Roberto, and like that he like is reluctant to use his powers and is like ashamed of being a mutant. So that aspect I did enjoy, but
I think they could have done more with Roberto da Costa.
Yeah.
Like
I think they will. I think
yeah.
next season, I think we're going to get a lot of difference. I think we'll get more Wolverine, although I think the first probably half of the season he's going to be like healing or something, and then maybe he'll disappear into the woods. A lot of people don't know. So Wolverine went through this in the comics where he lost his adamantium, and for several years he just had bone claws, and at some point someone tried to put the adamantium back into him, like forcibly. They take him back and basically like Weapon X all over again. They try to put it back in, and his body rejects it. And then from then on, he goes like feral, and this is not a favorite era of Wolverine for a lot of people, like this feral, bestial Wolverine. He started looking like an animal. His nose fell off. It got really weird. But I feel like they might do a little bit of that in the series. We're going to get some version of like this feral Wolverine living out in the wilderness, not wanting to be around people. So he might get relegated to the sidelines a little more, honestly. And as much as I love him, and I can't wait for Deadpool and Wolverine in 6 days.
I am excited for that.
Yeah. I think it's okay to like continue to give the spotlight to some other characters for a while. Roberto is Sunspot, and really just leaning into that, because Jean Grey was another one that they leaned into a lot in the old series, and I feel like they're still using her a lot now, but with the Madeline Pryor situation, it changes it enough that you're like interested again. And I do like that Jean wasn't fainting all the time. If you didn't watch the original series, she fainted like every other episode. Like Jean Grey would faint when anything happened. It was like a running joke. Like, oh, there goes Jean. Like she's passing out again. So I'm glad that she's not just relegated to this like girl who faints and needs saved all the time, because she's one of the most powerful.
Yeah. I was like, I'm kind of surprised. I've watched a little bit of the old episode, not enough to know that she faints every other episode. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of surprising to hear, knowing that she's supposed to be like the most, one of the most powerful.
Yeah, and they did go into, like I said, 9 episodes were based around her. So there are some characters I'd like them to focus on a little more, like even Beast, right? Like we haven't gotten a lot of Beast stories.
Yeah.
Like there are stories there. Beast has done things. He went off and joined the Avengers for a while. Like Beast is a character that has a lot of stuff even outside of the X-Men that he's done and dealt with. And even in the X-Men comics, they've shown him like go away from the X-Men for a while, do some other things, like went off and had a relationship. There's just all kinds of things that they could dive into in the next couple. I think they're supposed to do at least 2 more seasons, right?
This one was confirmed with,
the
fourth one was confirmed with one of season 3.
Yeah.
Fourth?
There's 3 more.
Good Lord. Okay.
Can I say something that might be considered a hot take?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Hot takes. You're one for the hot takes.
I guess If you ever listen to the old pods, I guess I could be considered the hot take person.
Yeah.
I kind of think Beast is just like Hulk, but not done as well.
Come on. No. Beast. Okay, listen. Beast he doesn't grow with anger, right? He doesn't change. Okay, he just stays Beast all the time.
It's so smart Hulk.
Kinda. Really smart Hulk. No, I don't think so. Sorry.
Okay, what do I need to watch to
I don't know, because they haven't done it yet. That's my point. Like they need to show more Beast story. They need to show some other stuff.
You gotta watch the episode of X-Men 97 where he spent an entire episode in prison, knowing he could break out.
Oh yeah.
Just reading Shakespeare.
Okay.
Understanding.
Okay, but here's the thing. I think Bruce Banner would also do similar things.
No, Bruce Banner would sit there selling product.
Yeah. And try not to get angry, right? No, Beast is he's such a he always wants to do the right thing. And which is cool, because in the comics they can play with that. Like if you see an alternate universe of Beast, there's one where he's evil. He's Dark Beast. It's really sinister and really kind of like sinister. Yeah, no, he actually at one point in like an alternate universe, he is a guy who experiments on mutants and stuff for and with Mr. Sinister. So, but he's a scientist at heart, and he wants to always do the right thing. He wants to do it the right way. Yeah, as he was saying, the first, not the first episode, the entire first season of X-Men the animated series, Beast stays in jail. So this is what I'm saying. We need more people. Like, we need to see some actual stuff happen. He had some great action moments in this.
Episode where he had like a bit of a romance with the blind girl.
Uh-huh.
It was really, really good.
In the original series, right? Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Like, I feel like we need more of that, like more, because we had so much focus on Wolverine and Jean originally. Who else? Who else got a lot of play in the 90s? Rogue got a lot of play in the 90s.
Okay, I gotta say, I do really like how they pulled off the weird tension between Rogue and Magneto
Oh, yeah.
in '97. It was very well done.
I'm saying, too, like, I don't know if you know this or not, because you're new to the series, but, like, they never even hinted at that in the old series. That there was a past between them. So it was, like, news to everyone.
It's kind of in the first movie a little bit.
In the first movie, he's really old.
Yeah.
And she's like a teenager, so I don't think it was like.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was a little confused when I started watching X-Men '97 after having only seen the first X-Men movie. Like, and I was like, "Is this illegal?"
Yeah, it is still kind of weird, to be honest. Like, Magneto is old.
Then again,
he's a Holocaust survivor, so
then
he's an old guy, and Rogue was very young coming in.
Then again, it being illegal, there's a lot of Sweet Home Alabama going on in the Marvel comics in the '90s.
Yeah.
So
90s was pretty wild. Yeah, I'll give it that. I think Rogue had some good moments this season, just with the Gambit situation. I think that her trying to hunt down his killer was awesome, and running into Captain America. Personally, I don't need to run into Avengers now. Like, I've seen so much Avengers. Like, do I need a Avengers cameo? But I'm glad that they didn't try to make it somehow like part of the MCU, like that version of Cap or something.
They only made me feel better about not liking Captain America.
Yeah, he's already been in the series before. There was like episodes where you go back and you look at Wolverine's past. And there's a whole episode where Wolverine and Captain America teamed up during World War II to work together. So I was completely okay with that cameo. But I'm glad they didn't try to go too hard on like doing cameo stuff, like bringing in characters we already know. Like, oh, here's
I think like the little
Iron Man.
I think like the little thing where they're kind of panning through it and they show a few different people, like Daredevil's in it.
Yeah.
And like,
no, that's cool. That's cool.
I thought that was cool. Like, I thought that was about enough as needed done.
Yep. You just see them. You just know that they exist in that universe as well, right?
Yeah.
So.
Cameos from that episode other than Captain America from like the Spider-Man end of the shared universe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Except for which I thought was a cool way to do it. Like, if you have more, what are you going to use them for primarily, right? Like cameos, like that's it. So I love that we got like Psylocke, a lot of these characters you've never seen, like in the animated series, showing up through Morph. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I can't quite figure out Morph. Like, I can't quite decide if I like him or not. I guess I don't know enough of the backstory.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you watch the original series, you probably wouldn't have liked him, because he was just like this. How would you describe him? It was like annoying. His voice was the worst.
He dies in the first episode and then comes back as a villain.
Yeah. He gets. You think he's dead, like Wolverine. He's Wolverine's best friend. And then Wolverine's like, I'll avenge you. That's the whole thing, right? And then like he ends up coming back and he's evil. And the way you know he's evil is he's really pale and he has dark circles under his eyes, and that's
classic.
That's pretty much it. So, what do you think of Bastion just as a villain?
I kind of thought he was stereotypical.
Really? Okay. Well, anybody else?
Yeah.
Bastion?
It was really convenient how they managed to cram like a really long 5-year storyline that's convoluted into 3 episodes to make it work.
I do have to say I was a little bit of side tangent, but also for a circle around to why it matters. So in middle school, we had to read the Divergent books. This is a big thing. For those that don't know, the guy who voices Bastion in X-Men '97 is Thor in the Divergent movies. So hearing his voice triggered like a guttural, emotional middle school memory.
Okay.
So I guess that was a bit of a turn off.
More personal. For you.
Yeah, it became very personal. Yeah, Theo James.
Him pulling off David's arm.
That was cool. Yeah.
Transform, like, there's a lot of shock factor moments in it that were like, wait a minute, this isn't kids.
Oh yeah, blood everywhere. You know, Gambit dying, like characters bleeding in the series did not happen in the original series. Didn't happen. Yeah, swearing, like it was definitely aged up for everyone, and that's what made it so good, man. It's like I said, it wasn't just like that. Oh, there's a couple cuss words and there's some blood in it and a little more violence. The stories were more complex. You know what I mean? Like it was so much better. I told you to watch it. I remember I was like, you should watch it. You're like, really? Should I?
Yeah.
I'm like, yes,
There's still
Ben.
many more of us out there just like that.
I know.
Don't have any idea.
Uh-huh.
And it's just gonna get bigger, I think.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think it's a stretch to say this is the best. Like, as far as X-Men
Mhm.
in that universe, this is the best thing they've come out with. And it's not really even close.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as showing like the blood and all that. So for those who also have watched the MCU, the scene where in the first Avengers movie where Coulson gets stabbed through the back, they had to reshoot that and replan it so many times just to be able to keep a PG-13 rating.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was intentional or if it just happened to be coincidental. Kind of the imagery they used to kill off Gambit and also have him kind of like stabbed to the back. They actually like show blood in that. So
Yeah.
But I do like the parallel.
Yeah, I think the Gambit death was rough. Like it was, like I said, it was really a cliffhanger too because like he died, and then the episode just ends, and then we don't even get to catch back up and see what's going on until like a whole nother episode passes. So they really made us sit with that feeling.
Nightcrawler's monologue is so
Oh,
good.
dude.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I mourned.
You know what? I think too, and I'm glad you brought up Nightcrawler. Dude, he was awesome in the series. Like he got to they showcased like comic book version of Nightcrawler. He had a sword at the end, two in his hands, one in his tail. Like it was that fight scene where like I think it's Wolverine and Nightcrawler taking on all these.
Yeah.
It was like and they were always best friends too. Like the morph thing was kind of a new thing with the animated series. They made that up with the animated series. But
I also
Wolverine and Nightcrawler were always close in the comics.
I didn't know that Nightcrawler was supposed to be Mystique's kid until '97.
Really? Yeah. See that? Yeah, that's another thing. It's like
Canonized his origin until like last year.
yeah, it's interesting what they've done too with comics. That's what's great about watching this stuff now, and then watching even live action stuff. If they're going to come out with X-Men movies and everything, like when they do that, how they tell stories, just like they do with Avengers, they change a lot of things about the story, and sometimes it's better, sometimes it's good. Sometimes you're like, oh, I wish they would have done what they did in the comic, but it keeps even the comic book people guessing. That's what I love about it. So, a lot of stuff happens in the comics, and then it's like canon forever. And then all of a sudden, they decide like we're gonna go back and like retcon this. We're gonna change like so many things have been done like that. Like Wolverine's past has drastically changed through the years. Like you said, Mystique and Nightcrawler, and then Rogue as well, being her daughter as well. Like it's crazy how much they've changed things in the comics and what they're gonna choose to use as canon going forward. Like whether it's animated series or live action films or whatever, however they do that. But usually, I'm a fan of the fact that they don't know exactly. Some people are like zealots about it. They're like, I want the comic book version, and that's it. It's like, so you want to know how the story ends every time. You want to know how it plays out. You want to know all the like.
I'm totally okay with it being changed.
Yeah.
But there is something I wanted to address from I guess our last topic, our last little thing to address. I really like the imagery, the quotes, scripting from the scene where they go into Magneto's mind. And it's just sheer beauty. I also really like when they're like they do the flashback with Charles and Eric, and just like they're talking about like what if I was a mutant, and like he telepaths to
tells him.
like, hey, I am one, like mind control.
Yep.
And I really like Magneto's response, like, oh, metal, it bends to my will. Like, I thought that was really well done. And just from like a psychology perspective, I kind of like how they show like the rising panic, like the water getting heavier, and just like Magneto spiraling. I think that is done beautifully.
Yeah. Was there anything that you guys didn't like about the series? I feel like we're like, yeah, it was so awesome, and it was. It was like the best thing we've seen in a long time. Yeah. Yeah, I think they're up soon.
Just the one thing that stuck out was Cyclops was like, I will not abandon my son. Nobody knows what it's like to be abandoned. I'm not doing it. And then it's like, I can't deal with this. Then you walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that is definitely a contradiction.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I didn't really like Jubilee and Sunspot. I just kind of thought that was cheesy. I hope they do better about it. I think they have the potential to fix it and grow it.
Yeah.
I would like to see that happen.
Yeah. Personally, I didn't. It bugged me a little bit that it played out like at the very end. It played out a little stereotypically with Bastion. I'm glad he died though. Like Scott tried to like extend a hand to him, which is like the X-Men way, but I still didn't want him to do it. I did not want that. I wanted, like, this is Bastion. He's kind of a cyborg. It's okay to kill Sentinels. Let's just take him out. Like, I don't know if I like that. After all they've been through and all he was trying to do to the world, to then extend a hand to him, like, what? This guy can't. He's not going to be an X-Man. What are you doing? Like, he's kind of irredeemable. So I felt like I didn't like that. I was like, what are you doing, Scott? Why? But that's it. That's a nitpick, and it's honestly played out the way it probably should have. So
yeah, those are
personal.
What would you say is your overall rating for the show? Out of 10.
Out of 10. I mean, it's 9.5 to 10.
Yeah,
like,
I'd give it a solid 9.
It exceeded all expectations. So, I think we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we got to wrap this. Yeah.
The last panel went over, and I didn't like them doing that to me, so I don't want to do that to the next people. So I appreciate everyone coming out.
Yeah. Check out Marvel Plus. Brett Scott's the host. He's great.
Yep. Marvel Plus podcast if you want to. We just cover all things MCU. So every one of the series, every one of the movies, cover it beat for beat. So
Deadpool comes out in 6 days.
It does. Can't wait. Thank you, everyone. This has been Marvel Plus. Appreciate it.